So, while we are waiting for everyone to get geared up, I have the same question as I had before lunch. Have you heard of the hungry judge effect? Because now I'm back again with the last session of the day. But this time I have a lovely panel with me. Actually, it's more their event than my event. But I thought once everyone is, or we're still getting rigged up, you and me, Fatih, we will need to share a microphone here. I think there are microphones for the rest of you. They will be installed as we go along. But in the interest of time, I will go through each of the participants one by one and ask you to introduce yourself. You all have responsibilities and position inside the Continuous Delivery Foundation, and you have other things going on in your day-to-day as well. So, starting from the right, we have Fatih Degirmenci. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Erik. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Fatih Degirmenci, and I work for Ericsson Software Technology, located in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm an open source developer and contributing to Continuous Delivery Foundation since its inception, and mainly in the area of special interoperability, and lately working with software supply chain security within Continuous Delivery Foundation as well, and contributing to some other communities too.
Thanks. Next up, I'm not sure if your microphone is already on, Brad. We have, let's skip. We can go to the other end then. We have Melissa McKay. Would you like to say hello?
Hi. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I have to say it is a pleasure to be here in person and meet a lot of you that this is the first time I met you, and we've been working together for over a year. It's pretty crazy. I am a developer advocate for JFrog. I've been doing that position for a couple of years. Prior to that, I was a developer for 20 years plus. So my passion is for the developer and making developers' lives easier. Also implementing DevOps practices, that kind of thing. For now, I am a part of the Technical Oversight Committee for the CDF Foundation, as well as the chair for the Interoperability Special Interest Group.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, we have Mariah Ashby.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I have not been in this community for very long, but hopefully I'll stay for a long time. We'll see what happens. But I'm a developer advocate at Armory, and I guess my goal is to increase accessibility through educational content and really lower the barrier to entry to continuous delivery and really welcome more people into the community.
Thank you. And finally on the panel, we have Brad McCoy.
Yeah, my name is Brad. Most of you, I introduced myself at the talk before. I work as the head of platform engineering and also contribute to Kipton and Ortelius as well. Ortelius for the CDF Foundation and Kipton for the CNCF. And also a CDF ambassador as well.
Thank you. So the main topic for this panel is going to be how CDEvents can be used to foster innovation in the CI/CD ecosystem. And as Andrea mentioned this morning, the CDEvents project sprung out of CDEvents, which in turn sprung out of SIG Interoperability. And Fatih, you were there in the beginning, right? Can you give us some background on the interoperability SIG?
Yes, thanks, Erik. So I think CDEvents, its roots goes back to 5 years or so, like 4 or 5 years. And it was actually, Andrea was part of the very first conversations we have been having about the challenges we all have been facing with the different CI/CD tools and technologies and how we can make sure we get those different technologies working with each other well. I remember a conversation me and Andrea had around 2018 in Vancouver, OpenStack Summit. And Andrea was actually leading OpenStack QA project there. I was contributing to another project under Linux Foundation Networking. And we have been trying to bring different deliverables from OpenStack, Kubernetes, and some other open source projects to our project to integrate them with each other. But our project was using Jenkins, OpenStack community was using Zool, CNCF was using cross-cloud CI, and it was impossible for us to bring those different open source components to our community because all these different tools work in different ways, and there wasn't any way to make them work out of the box. So we kind of failed to achieve that dream at that point in time. But during 2019, KubeCon San Diego, few of us bumped into each other again, actually, and we proposed the formation of special interest group during KubeCon San Diego, 2000 November, and then from that day on, things started happening. Few community members joined special interest group interoperability, formed the events work stream that turned into a special interest group events, which Andrea summarized as well. And then finally we have here, like, the conversation me and Andrea had like 4 or 5 years ago resulted in formation of this project and all of us being here today. So it's like you can never know what certain conversation could lead to you. And that is why it is so exciting to see all of us here, and looking forward to what else CDEvents could enable, what kind of innovation that could result in.
Thank you. So SIG Interoperability, that's its name. It's not SIG integration. And we heard Kara said in the morning that those are not to be seen as the same thing. So I would like to ask Melissa, what would you define as the difference between integration and interoperability?
So I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different way, since we've heard a lot about the differences between integration and interoperability. And I'm going to take it in the perspective of when you get into higher levels in a company, for example. So first of all, I have come on the shoulders of some very amazing folks that were involved in this project long before myself. And the enthusiasm is just, it's catching. And I'm really, really impressed with how the CDEvents has progressed, and the interoperability SIG basically has the feeling of a proud parent. The child is doing well. So if you look at this from the perspective of like a manager, for example, if you have a group of developers, they want to accomplish something, they have specific skill sets, and they want to use the tools they're comfortable with, the things that are available to them at their company. They want to make sure that they can produce as quickly as possible in order to satisfy the needs of the company and of their project. And in order to do that, they often need to work around certain integration points. And we've heard, us discuss already the need for glue code, the complication of that, having to maintain that over long periods of time. If you're using a bunch of different projects that you aren't necessarily maintaining yourself or have control over, you're also going to be involved in maintaining any updates to that code base and managing, any incompatibility issues that arise. So, the CDEvents, it just makes sense to have this other abstraction layer where all of these tools can work together, and now we're all speaking the same language. And the capacity that a group like CDEvents has, the SIG that this came from, is you have representation from all of the different companies, from all of the different use cases, so that you get a lot of input from several different places. So right away you get credibility. Second, for the hierarchy of your company, instead of having your developers spend their time on a POC, because think about this, a developer's choice in wanting to create a tool like this is either spend their own time outside of work, and then maybe get a POC up and running, and then maybe get approval from their managers, or you can join a group like CDEvents. Everyone shares in this responsibility and builds something successful, and I count CDEvents as being a successful outcome. And then you get more credibility since you have all of the input from all of these various sources. And this is something that managers will be happy to, or at least more happy to give a chance and be able to use this in the projects.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to let the panel commingle a bit, so to say, because we have now heard about the foundation from SIG interoperability through CDEvents to CDEvents, and we heard Melissa talk a bit about like what this enables us to do. So one thing I really like to do when I have access to such fantastic people with different backgrounds and different day-to-day lives is to ask simply, what's the future going to be like? Where are we going? So I would like each of you to answer that question, and I would like to start with Brad.
Okay, sure. So where the future's going with CDEvents in general?
I guess
Yeah.
interoperability and CDEvents.
Yeah, I see it being abstracted away a lot. So all businesses should just worry about that little piece that they put on the top. So instead of having to spend, I mean, a DevOps engineer now costs a lot of money. If you have a team of 4, that's $1 million a year. So do you want to rebuild the wheel over and over again, or do you want to focus on innovation and what your company to deliver business value and value for the customer? So I see everything, like Melissa said, talking to each other out of the box, and we should be worrying about our business value instead of worrying about integrating tools and writing scripts so this tool talks to this and maintaining it. And I just see like watching all the talks today was really nice, seeing how Tecton works and cross-play Knative. It's just going to all talk beautifully with each other, and it's a dream, really.
Thanks. Maria, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I think I'm going to come at this from the Spinnaker perspective. So Spinnaker at its heart is community-oriented. But if your community speaks a bunch of different languages, it makes it really, really hard for you guys to work together. And I think as we see in the past 2 years of like being virtual, you can have community members from anywhere. And because it's so spread out, you're going to have people coming in with different backgrounds, different ways of doing things. So I think as the community grows, we need to all be speaking the same language, because community is what is fueling our innovation. It's what we get all of the amazing things that we're here talking about, because we have more people coming in. So I think just having everyone speak the same language is going to really improve that innovation piece.
Thank you. Fatih, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think both Brad and Melissa highlighted the fact that if our developers ourselves, if we can spend our time on more value-adding activities rather than patching here, scripting there, that would be a big win for us as developers personally, as well as the organizations we are part of, because then we will be spending our time to innovate new things rather than making things running, and those things could be broken on a daily basis, because if we put some glue code in place and integrate things with each other, no one can guarantee that those things will stay working for more than a day or a few hours, because communities always develop new things and they may be breaking the things you have been using as part of your wrapper code or glue code. And the other thing I want to highlight about, especially with CDEvents, is like the current use cases, mainly like the discussed around CI/CD topics, which is understandable. But as you all probably are aware of latest conversations around software supply chain, that gives us a lot of opportunities to contribute to improving state of supply chain from CI/CD perspective as well, because CDEvents could open up opportunities for us to notify about new vulnerabilities by new event types, or identify some vulnerable component in our container which is running on production. So that could be notified by CDEvents, and something else could be monitoring those events and taking action to accommodate those issues. So there are lots of different things we can do within the community, and like if you have such ideas, I think CDEvents gives that opportunity to come and talk about those ideas and help enable us to push the domain forward, CI/CD domain or other domains we are working with.
Thank you. And Melissa?
Yeah. Okay, I just want to start with a question. Hands up if you've learned something new today. Yeah. This is what these groups are all about, right? This is where we come together, we learn about these things, and they don't stay in this room. The goal is that you return to your teams, you spread this knowledge, and we get more visibility of things like CDEvents. And what I hope for in the future is that as open source projects take this on and take the lead, we're going to see for-profit organizations follow. There's plenty of advantage to not reinventing the wheel, and I know that even for-profit companies will benefit from this. It is so much more fun to be working on the new feature rather than trying to just get the pieces working together and spending all your time there. So that's what I hope for the future, and we need all of your help to do that.
Thank you so much. I would like anyone in the audience, if you have a question, raise your hand and I would try to bring the microphone to you while we are waiting for such questions. I would like to know, what requests do you have for the CDEvents project? What should we focus on? In what order should we do things? Because there's always a million things to do. We've mentioned POCs, SDKs, we've mentioned community outreach, we've mentioned documentation and all that stuff. What would you say is the top 1 or top 3 priorities that we should focus on? Whoever wants to can open up.
For me, probably community outreach, what we're doing now. So the more people you have involved, the more things you can do, and that would be probably my first one.
Anyone else?
The other thing I noticed is like we talk about technology because we like talking about technology, we like playing with the technology. And Melissa, you highlight that point as well. I think we need to find ways to make the work that is being done within CDEvents project to be understood by decision makers. Why this thing is important, like what are the business aspects? Why are we talking about like making these different tools talking to each other using same language? For example, if I want to contribute this project, I need to go and get permission from my manager, and my manager, he or she isn't necessarily to know the details of Tecton, Jenkins, Spinnaker, but if I can, talk about what kind of benefits he or she could get or the organization could get, then that could help my case a lot better. So technical documentation is great. I like the proof of concept you brought up as one of the first things, or the user documentation, but then we need some additional supporting documentation to get the decision makers on board with the idea so they start investing if they are not doing it.
I'm going to not pick because I'm an American and I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to say community outreach and documentation because they go hand in hand. So okay, let's say you get a bunch of people in the community, but if you don't have good documentation, you just have a bunch of lost soldiers just wandering around being confused. So I think they go hand in hand together because you don't want to spend that time individually training people. You want to already have a template for people to just follow easily, because when you begin, I think people stop because they get overwhelmed, but if we can reduce that frustration, we will be able to actually, keep people in the community instead of just reaching out and then losing people later on.
So, Mariah, you've worked as a computer science educator previously, and I mean, documentation is an enormously fascinating topic to me. You can either write it in a way that only super technically detailed people understand it and they really appreciate it, or you can write it too far in the other direction, so it gets too fluffy for anyone to really appreciate it. Do you have any tips for us when we start writing this documentation? How do we get it to the right level?
Okay, that's a really good question. So before my developer advocate era, I was spending a lot of my time teaching 10 to 12-year-olds Java. So I think I would say 7th grade is a good metric. If a 7th grader understands it, pretty much you can guarantee that everybody who should be hearing about it can get it. So a 7th grader has, reading comprehension, and they know how to ask for more. So when you're making documentation, you want to give people enough that they're hungry for a more complex step. So if you're, doing something, you want people to just give a bite-sized amount without having them choke on everything. So I think 7th grade is good.
Thank you. So it's always tricky when you try to teach someone something. Different people appreciate different types of or different avenues for learning. Like we showed a super technical proof of concept, which is super nice or many people find that really, really inspiring. Many people would prefer hearing people talk or seeing stuff written down and stuff like that. So I think the approach that we've had today with the varied types of talks is going to be really, really helpful. We have the documentation in place, we have the proof of concept and the SDKs. Then obviously, or not obviously, but I think it would be really nice to start integrating these with various things. To you again, Mariah, when are we going to see CDEvents in Spinnaker?
Ooh, that sounds like a question for an engineer on my team. Honestly, I think sooner rather than later. I don't want to give you an exact date because, once again, that sounds like a question for an engineer on my team. But I think like these events and like if you come out from this place and then you join the Spinnaker Slack and then you say, oh, I'm really interested in CDEvents, having community outreach and it'll push it towards like the front of the long list of things to do for Spinnaker. So I think it depends on you guys.
Great answer. Melissa, I would claim maybe that CDEvents can somehow be a deliverable into SIG interoperability to help you guys push through interoperability in the CI/CD ecosystem. How would you, or are you and how are you planning to use CDEvents in the interoperability work going forward?
So in the interoperability, like in general, in the community, or?
I guess in the SIG or in the community, whichever is fine.
Okay, I'll give two different answers. So as far as community, I love the focus on documentation, and I think we could actually use some of your expertise here, Marat. We are in the process of sharing this documentation in a consumable way that will make sense for different audiences. So not only for the technical audiences, but also for management, getting those big points out there, why this matters, why this is important. Right now we have our GitHub repo where we have a bunch of this work stored.